I want to bring you back to the book of Psalms. We started with Psalms. We'll be back with you in Psalms. Psalm 63. And I want to read to you Psalm 63, and then I'm going to read it to you in its entirety. It's only 11 verses, so don't panic. It's 11 verses. I want to read to you that, and then I want to go back and we're going to talk about some specific pieces, and then we're going to build a bigger picture in just a moment. So Psalm 63, verse number 1. And again, if you got ability, jump in with me. Don't just sit back and listen to me talk. I don't have the ability to put it on the screen. I guess I could turn it like this, but you can't read it, neither can I. So I'm going to spin it around so that I can watch it. And if you got a Bible nearby or you got another device, read it with me. Psalm 63, verse 1. O God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. I want you to hear the passion coming out of this. This is just beautiful in its words. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there is no water. So I have looked for you in the sanctuary to see your power and your glory. Because your loving kindness is better than life, my lips shall praise you. Thus I will bless you while I live. I will lift up my hands in your name. My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness, and my mouth shall praise you with joyful lips. When I remember you on my bed, I meditate on you in the night watches. Because you have been my help, therefore in the shadow of your wings I will rejoice. My soul follows close behind you. Your right hand upholds me. But those who seek my life to destroy it shall go into the lower parts of the earth. They shall fall by the sword. They shall be a portion for jackals, but the king shall rejoice in God. Everyone who swears by him shall glory, but the mouth of those who speak lies shall be stopped. Now, that's an amazing passage of scripture. It's really passionate, beautifully written. But we're going to take a little deeper dive into this today, and I think you're going to see something in this passage of scripture that really is going to bring it to life. If you notice, if you've got a Bible, or maybe you go online. Sometimes I even go online. There's a bunch of different websites that have the Bible. You can maybe you have the U version. In fact, I don't know if it's in the U version. I'm going to pull it up here. Give me 1 second. I don't know if the U version. That's a really popular Bible app. Oh, it does. It does. So the U version has it as well, because go back to the top of the screen there. If you've got your Bible, or if you got a regular Bible, or you can go online somewhere, get a Bible, and you'll notice that at the top of Psalm 63, there's a sentence there. A Psalm of David when he was in the wilderness of Judah. So a Psalm of David when he was in the wilderness. Now, here's the cool part about those words. Those words, give me a second here because I'm going to explain it. A lot of Bible apps nowadays, or even some Bibles that you can buy, they have headings. They have different sections of the Bible have different headings. Like in the gospel, it'll be the miracle of the loaves or healing of the blind man. Those headings were not in the original text. They were added later by the translators to help sort of understand the context of what was spoken. But the really cool thing about Psalms is those words at the top of Psalms were actually in the original writings. They're not added. So if the Bible is divinely inspired, then those words are actually divinely inspired. So the context of this Psalm 63 is a Psalm of David in the wilderness. Now, you got to get the picture, okay? What's David doing in the wilderness? Hanging out? No. First of all, if you go and you look at the Judean wilderness, it's a barren place. It's a terrible place. So the context of this is hugely important. And if we look at the context, we're going to understand the beauty of this whole entire passage of scripture, because David is in the wilderness. He is in a very difficult situation. He is being pursued by Saul because Saul's mad at him because of this whole back and forth. And I don't have time to go into the whole story, but there's this whole back and forth with King Saul and David. And so David's in the wilderness, and it's not like he's on this cruise, folks. He's not sitting sunning and tanning every day, waiting for Saul to die. He's in the wilderness. I mean, there's hardships, there is difficulties, there's all kinds of things that he's facing. I mean, he's facing. Think about it. What are some of the things you would experience or things that you would lack in a wilderness situation? Think of the desert. My wife and I have spent some time out in the desert in Nevada, out west, and it is we've driven through the Mojave. And if you ever driven through the Mojave, it's just like emptiness. It's barren. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, there's zero. It's completely for miles and miles and miles of empty, barren ground. Rocky, stony, hard ground. So in this wilderness area, now I'm not saying that the Judean wilderness is the Mojave. However, it's a barren place. So what are the things you're going to experience and you're going to lack? Well, the first thing you're going to have water is an issue. Food is an issue. You're going to miss your bed. You're going to miss a place to lay down and comfortable. You're going to miss a lot of those things. You're going to be weary. You're going to be tired. You're going to start to, your strength's going to start to be weak. You're going to be dealing with wild animals. I mean, if you have food, more than likely that food's going to be stolen at night by wild animals. I mean, there's so many things you're dealing with in this wilderness. And oh, by the way, you're there because you didn't do anything. You were there because all you did was some guy showed up at your house, told you you're going to be king, and you end up in the wilderness because of that. So David didn't even go to the wilderness because David was a bad guy. David's in a wilderness because he was actually a God after God's own heart, but yet ended up in the wilderness. So David's not even in the wilderness because of something he did wrong. Well, isn't that usually the first thing we do when stuff goes wrong in our life? What is the first thing we say? Oh God, what did I do wrong? Because we always equate performance with punishment. We always equate our performance with punishment or reward. So if I do good, God gives me good things. If I do bad, God gives me bad things. So therefore, if I'm doing something, if I feel like I'm being punished, I therefore equate that, what am I doing wrong? And if I'm getting rewarded, what am I doing good? But most of the time, when things go wrong in our life, we go, what am I doing? What have I done wrong? So let's go to this. What did David do wrong? Let's see. He spent time in the field with a bunch of sheep, praising and worshiping God, fellowshiping with God every day. The prophet shows up at his house and anoints him to be king. He kills a giant, an amazing victory. And what does he get for all of that? He ends up in the wilderness. Now, what did David didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do it. He wasn't plotting against Saul. In fact, at the end of this 63, you see that not only was he not plotting against Saul, he was still trying to protect Saul, even though he was the one in danger. So notice the context here. He didn't do anything wrong. So stop trying to figure out, because things aren't going right in your life, what'd you do wrong? Are there times where, things aren't going right that are equated to the fact that we're not following God? Yes, but not every time something goes wrong does it mean God's mad. And every time something goes wrong doesn't mean God's punishing you. We have wilderness moments in our life. And sometimes the wilderness moments are places of isolation so that God can test us and prepare us. Notice Jesus went to the wilderness for 40 days before his ministry, but that time in the wilderness was preparation and testing. David's time in the wilderness was preparation and testing. Go back and read it, because the guy that went into the wilderness wasn't the guy that came out of the wilderness. In fact, he went in there by himself, came out with 400 dudes that were bad to the bone. So notice what's going on here. But let's go back again. So we got to paint the picture, right? He's not in a utopia. He's not in a garden. He's not at Disneyland or Disney World. He's in a wilderness. Let's read this again in that context. So watch this. Ready? Psalm 63, verse 1. In the wilderness. Oh God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there's no water. He's saying there's no water. But instead of thinking about my natural thirst only brings me back to realize the greater need of my life is the spiritual thirst. In this, notice when he's saying this, I want you to get this picture, right? When he's saying this, that I'm seeking for you in a dry and thirsty land where there's no water, he's saying, I'm thirsty naturally, but more importantly than being thirsty naturally, I long for you in my soul and spirit. David understood right from the beginning of this Psalms that the key to natural fulfillment was spiritual fulfillment. To be naturally fulfilled, he had to first be spiritually fulfilled. Because notice, as he said this, he said it. In fact, later on, he even kind of refers to it. When he's saying this, he was saying this from a parched, dry mouth, where he was saying, I got no water, but ultimately, God, I am seeking you. I'm seeking you. What do you do when you have no water? You seek for water. You go look for water. Water is everything, especially in a dry land. You want water. You will do everything for water. But David said, I get up every morning and I'm seeking. But the first thing I'm seeking is you. Before I seek my natural need, I want to seek you. And in fact, it's so ingrained in me. My soul is thirsty for you. My flesh, my dry, baked, cracking flesh that happens when you start to get dehydrated. My soul is searching for you. My flesh is longing for you in this barren land. But first of all, before I find natural water, I want to get spiritual water. Before I find my natural comfort in this coronavirus, I've got to first find my spiritual compass in this virus. I've got to look for my spiritual needs to be met before my natural needs. Because watch what happens. Look, so he's got no water. He's parched. But he says, I've looked, so I've looked. That word looked in the Hebrew means actually to see a vision. He has a vision. Well, you know what you call a vision in the wilderness? A mirage. And you know why when you start seeing a mirage? You start seeing a mirage because you are dying. You see a mirage because you are that. But when David was at his moment and at his weakest, instead of his mirage, even his vision, even down in his heart, he could still see God, even at his lowest. Because he said, I have had a vision for you in the sanctuary to see your power and your glory. Now watch this. Verse 3, ready? Context. Because your loving kindness is better than life. My lips will praise you. What lips? These cracked, dry. You ever had dry lips? You ever been out in the desert or in the heat to the point your lips dry out, that even a smile begins to crack and pain and sometimes can even call you to believe? That's David. He's looking up. He's singing this to God. He's writing this to God, but he's writing it through dry, cracked lips. But still, it was something in him. Instead of going into complaining, saying, God, where's the water? God, why are you leaving me like this? God, send me some chapstick. Hopefully cherry flavor if you got it. He wasn't saying that. He's like saying, God, even in my lowest, most broken place where my lips are chapped, my lips praise you. I'm praising you from my broken places. Oh, folks, can someone just stop for a moment? Stop praising God from your mountains. Praise God from your broken places. Say, God, I praise you from the depth of my heart. Even though my heart may be broken, I praise you from the broken places. David was praising God from the broken places. Lips were cracked, but he said, I praise you from these cracked lips. Then he goes on to say, thus I will bless you while I live. Huh, I love that. Now you're starting to get the picture, right? That sounded real noble. We read it like, I will praise you as long as I live. He was saying, I praise you as long as I live because I don't think I'm going to live much longer. So whatever I have left, I'll praise you with because I think I might die here tonight. That's really what he's saying. I will praise you while I live. I will lift up my hands in your name. That didn't sound like a big deal to lift up your hands, but when you are weary and you are broken and you are tired and you are trying to survive, just the effort of lifting up your hands takes all your strength. David saying, whatever little bit of life I've got left, whatever little bit of strength I've got left, I'm giving you praise. It goes on to say this, my soul shall be satisfied. Verse 5, my soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness. Out of my mouth shall you praise you with joyful lips. There he goes back to those lips again. But what does he say? I shall be satisfied as marrow and fatness. You know why he's saying that? I guarantee you that's coming out of a hungry belly. He wasn't having marrow and fatness in the wilderness. He was surviving. He was eating whatever he could eat. But he said, God, my natural man is hungry, but I know you can satisfy the spiritual man. And he goes on to say this. When I remember you, verse 6, when I remember you on my bed, I meditate on you in the night watches. Get that. When I remember you on my bed. I think David was saying, man, I remember those nights I got to lay on that Tempur-Pedic pillow top mattress back at my dad's house. Boy, those were some nice nights of sleep, because now I'm laying on this rocky ground. I've got this rock as a pillow and dirt as my blanket. And the Bible said, he said this, I even meditate you in the night watches. You know what he was doing? He couldn't sleep. I believe he was meditating on God because at night he couldn't even sleep. It was so uncomfortable. I cannot sleep when I'm hot. I don't know how you are. If I'm hot, I can't sleep. Oh, I cannot sleep. It's got to be cold. All you warm sleepers, God bless you. My wife looks like an Eskimo explorer when she comes to sleep with me because she's cold, but I cannot sleep if it's hot. But I remember we went down. We were on vacation one time, and it was hot. I mean, hell would have been a lateral move at that point in time. It was miserably hot, and the place we were staying didn't have any air conditioning. And I'm telling you right now, that was one of the most miserable night sleeps I've ever had in my life because it was so brutally hot. It was one of those hots that we had this little tiny fan. It was this little fan. And it was so hot that when the fan blew, it felt like heat was being blown on you because the fan was just blowing hot air. In fact, we just turned the fan off. It was I remember that night, I couldn't barely sleep. I was so miserably hot. And David said, I'm remembering my bed. I'm laying on this rocky ground, but even in the midst of all this, and even when I'm awake, I'm still thinking about you. He wasn't complaining. He wasn't giving God why. He wasn't, what are you doing, God? Where are you at? He's like, hey, God, even in the midst of this, I'm still connected to you. He goes on to say, because you have been my help, therefore, in the shadow of your wings will I be rejoice. That's a guy that's, he's not able to have the same things he had before. When he says, therefore, in the shadow of your wings, I'll rejoice, that there's a whole concept. I don't have the time to go into that, but he's saying, even though I can't be in the shadow of your wings, I still feel like I'm there because I still feel connected to you. And then he says, my soul follows close. My soul follows close behind you. Your right hand upholds me, but those who seek my life to destroy it shall go to the lower parts of the earth. They shall fly by the sword. Then he says this kind of interesting line. They shall be a portion for the jackals. You know why? I imagine at the time he's writing that, he can hear the howling, the cackling of the jackals in the background. And he's like, they probably had stolen his food by that point in time. They probably had kept him up at night. He could hear them circling, waiting for their moment to strike. And he's saying, Lord, I wouldn't mind, instead of them coming after me, that you'd send them after my enemy. But in the end, he says this, but the king shall rejoice in God, and everyone who swears by him shall glory. But the mouth of those who speak lies shall be stopped. You know what he was saying? That even the reason why I'm here, because Saul has chased me, I'm out here. But God, even in that, I'm not going to get bitter, but I'm going to get better. I'm not going to get bitter at my life and where I'm at in this wilderness. But God, I choose to keep my focus on you. Now, that's beautiful, right? It's amazing. But you know what? You know how we say, well, that's David. He was special. I'm not David. But here's the point I want to make to you today for the next few minutes. There was a reason David could write Psalm 63 in the wilderness. He did not walk in the wilderness to find God. He walked in the wilderness with God already with him. So too many times we walk into the wilderness on our own and have to find God in the wilderness. But David already had God. And there's this context. So I want to take for just a few moments, for the next few moments, and show you a comparative for a second. And then we're going to take the comparative and I want to show you an example, and then we'll see where we end up. So walk with me just for a moment here. All right. You need a break? You need something to drink? Go to the kitchen, grab something. I'll be right here. Get a snack, breakfast, whatever you need. Stay with me. All right. So let's compare two things. We have David and we have this other dude named Saul. Saul is the first king of Israel. And we have David, who is the shepherd boy, the giant slayer. I mean, this guy is legendary, right? So we got these two. And let's compare them for a moment in case you don't really know much about the story. Let's compare. Now, Saul came from a wealthy family, had everything going for him, good looking, strong, healthy. I mean, probably ran faster than everybody, probably stronger than everybody. In fact, the Bible even describes him and says he was a full foot, taller than everybody. So the dude was taller than everybody, better looking. I mean, he had everything going for him. Came from a good, wealthy family, everything. David had a life that he was born in very strange circumstances. Maybe one day I'll get a chance to tell the story here. But his circumstances of his birth were surrounded with controversy. They were surrounded with pain and hurt. And he, instead of being able to be connected with the family, he was sent out to the field by himself. And not just any old field. He was sent out to the field that was filled with lions and bears, with flesh-eating killers. He was sent out there. So we have the contrast of Saul, everything going for him. David, not much. Didn't have much going for him. Wasn't necessarily somebody that would strike you with his appearance. In fact, his own family didn't even really connect with him. He had a lot of stuff going against him. His whole birth process was all messed up. It looked like he was illegitimately born. I mean, this guy he had a lot of hurt, a lot of pain in his life. And so he's out in the field. Saul is grown up in all of this amazing opportunity. But if we look at their life, there's something that begins to happen. Because Saul is chosen to be the first king of Israel, right? So Israel, long story, Israel doesn't have a king. They were being ruled by judges. And they started looking around to the other nations around them and said, hey, we want a king like everybody else. Well, Samuel, who was the prophet of Israel at the time, he had some sons, but his sons were messed up and they weren't the guys for the job. And so God spoke to him and said, hey, you're going to meet this guy. When you meet him, you'll know who he is. He's going to be the first king of Israel. So blah, blah. Saul's out looking for some lost donkeys. Voila, here we go. We find that Samuel finds Saul. And so Saul gets anointed to be king. And man, this dude starts off with a bang. For the first 2 years, man, he is killing it. I mean, the dude is killing it. He's winning victories. He's defeating armies. I mean, Saul is just absolutely on fire. He's amazing. Well, about 2 years into his whole reign, he had this understanding with Samuel. So when they would go to battle, Samuel said, listen, you don't go into battle until I show up. And I bring a sacrifice to God before we go into battle. So apparently everything was going along. He was doing that. Well, there's this one particular battle. It was the Philistines were there. I mean, these guys were chomping at the bit. Saul gathered his army together. He had all his troops ready to go. Their knives were sharpened. Their swords were ready to go. Their spears were in place. Their shields were on their arm. They were ready to go. And he says, okay, fellows, we can't go until Samuel shows up and offers sacrifice. So they wait. And they wait. And they wait. And they wait, 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 and they wait. And they wait, and all of a sudden now everyone's saying, Saul, hey, where's Samuel? Did he forget? And Saul starts to get antsy. Boy, he's starting to get antsy. I mean, what am I going to do? And so Saul says, okay, the Philistines might start attacking anytime. I can't wait anymore. I don't know where Samuel is. I guess he got lost. Maybe his donkey broke down on the side of the road, and he's waiting for a tow truck. I don't know where he's at, but he's lost. So you know what? I'll go ahead and sacrifice. So what's he do? Brings a sacrifice to God. Woo! Well, guess what? Samuel shows up and says, what are you doing? Saul says, I'm sacrificing to God. He said, no, that wasn't, no, you're wrong. I told you, you don't do it. You wait for me to do it. And Saul's like, yeah, but you were late. And he said, it didn't matter. I told you, you wait. And God said, hey, through Samuel, because you've disobeyed, you're no longer going to be my king. I mean, right there, just said, that's it. You're going to do it your way. You're not my king anymore. I'm going to go find me a new guy. Well, at the same time Saul's doing all that, we got this little boy named David out there humming with to his harp and killing lions and bears. And the story goes, Samuel shows up there, anoints him to be king. We have these two guys that now are running parallel courses. Two parallel deals. So how do we find the difference? Because you have this guy in Saul and a guy in David. What was the difference? You see, the first guy, Saul, he had everything going for him. He should have been successful. He had all the pedigree. He had the physical attributes, more than likely the mental attributes. He had everything going for him to be successful and started off very successful, but lost it all. We had another guy who started off with very little and ended up becoming great. In fact, it was the throne of David in which Jesus came to sit on. It was the throne of David. This is how significant David was. But here's the point. God first gave Israel a king that they wanted, but God then gave them a king that he wanted. The first one God gave to Israel, Saul, fit everything that they wanted in a king. Strong, tall, handsome, wealthy, a great warrior in battle. But look how that ended up. But the second time, God said, I'll just give you this shepherd boy. What was the difference? The difference was this, that Saul never really knew how to connect to God on his own. But long before the palace, long before the giant, long before the crowds chanting his name, David, 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 give me a D, give me an A, give me a V, give me an I, give me a D, David. I mean, long before all those cheers, David was connecting with God every day. You see, it doesn't seem like a big deal, right? It's a massive deal. Because you see, when it came to moments of crisis, David knew where to go. Look at Psalm 63. In moments of crisis, what did he do? God, I'm thirsty, but I'm still wanting you more than thirst. God, I'm hungry, but I still want my spiritual food more than my natural food. God, I'm surrounded by danger, but more than that, I trust you to be my protection, not the sword and the shield that I have, but you are my sword. God, my lips are cracked and broken and hurting, but God, I still praise you from my cracked lips. That's what the attitude of David was. But he didn't get there because he just decided. He got there because he knew how to connect with God. He knew how to connect with God. But you see, how did Saul get so messed up? Because Saul didn't know how to connect to God on his own. His whole connection with God was through Samuel. Because watch what happened. Guess what? Go read 1 Samuel 28. Saul, God says, I don't want any of these psychics, these oracles, the mediums, these spiritists. I don't want any of them in ever. Get them all out. So Saul kicked them all out. But guess what? Saul was in a moment of crisis. And he's needing direction. He's needing work. He's needing something to help him get through this moment of crisis. And 1 Samuel 28 said this, Samuel's dead. Samuel had died. No more Samuel. Guess what? Saul had lost his connection to God because his connection to God was through Samuel. Well, guess what? Samuel died. So what does Saul do? Instead of going and finding God for himself because he had been connected with God, he had to disguise himself, get all incognito and go find himself a medium to have a seance. The king of Israel is having a seance to talk to the dead because he was so desperate and he was so connected to God through Samuel. He couldn't find God on his own, that he was willing to even disobey God to find an answer from God because he didn't know how to get it on his own. So at his moment of crisis, it led him farther down a road of deception and a road of farther away from God because he was never connected to God. Go read it. He never really truly has a personal connection with God. He never really truly. He had a couple here and there. I mean, there was a time where he goes and there's these men come down from the mountain. They were worshiping God. They start dancing and they start prophesying to him. But that was another. You never find Saul by himself. Nobody around connecting to God. Never happens. Never do you see Saul by himself. He always had to have somebody helping him get connected to God. But yet we find David by himself in a field, just a shepherd boy, waking up in the morning saying, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside this." He's writing these beautiful words to God by himself with nobody around connecting to God. But Saul didn't have that. So guess what happened? When Saul was in his moments of crisis, he didn't know where to go. When everything that Saul used to have to connect to God was taken away, he panicked. It actually went in roads of deception and roads of rebellion, dark places. Whereas when David was in his moment of crisis, he knew the source of where to go because he had been walking with God. You see, it's very much like this. I've got a cell phone here. Most of you probably have something similar to this. I have an iPhone. You might be somebody that's behind the times and has an Android. I feel sorry for you that you're using such an antiquated piece of equipment. But for those of you that have been enlightened and you have an iPhone or something to this device, here's the amazing thing. This is an amazing piece of equipment. Think about it. I mean, it basically cost you the same price as a house. But it's an amazing piece of equipment. To think about the power that this device has, I mean, what it can do. I mean, basically, we have thousands of pictures on here. I mean, we can watch movies. You can watch me on it if you choose to do that. You can listen to music. I mean, it's amazing things. I mean, you have the internet right on your fingertips. Anything you want to know. Because we know Google knows everything and is always right. You have all this stuff available. This is an amazing piece of equipment. But you got nowadays we got streaming services, right? Apple streams, Amazon streams, Pandora. I mean, all these streaming services. But before then, so let's go back a few years, you could only download songs, right? You could download them onto your device, and then there you could listen to them. But here's the thing that's really crazy about this phone. It has all this power, but you have this little feature here, and I can't show you because it's probably going to get reflected by the lights. Oh, maybe so. I'll flip it down. See, if you go to the menu here, those of you that don't have an Android, if you have an Android, I don't know what your menu looks like. There's a little button up here. It looks like an airplane. You click that button. I'll go ahead and hit it. Now, you can't tell. Can you see? I don't know if you can see that. It looks like a blurry mess. Now, my phone's in airplane mode. So what's that mean? That means this, is that whatever's on this phone before it went to airplane mode is the only thing on this phone. I cannot download or upload or connect anything else on this phone now that's in airplane mode. It's completely disconnected. It has everything it needed, but now it's disconnected. It's isolated. So guess what? If I wanted right now to pick a song to play that's not downloaded, if I needed a new song to play and I try to do it, it's going to tell me, can't play it, you're not connected. Or airplane mode's turned on, whatever the error message says. It won't let me do it because I'm not connected. So I've got to go back on, I've got to turn on the connection, I got to get a new song, but then I can choose to turn it off. You see, most of us do that. We find that person or that church or whatever we choose, and we go and on Sunday morning we turn ourselves on. Okay, we're out of airplane mode. Whoa, we're connected. So, okay, I need a fresh download for this week. And guess what? We get hooked in on Sunday, right? We download. Or if you're a dial-up, it's... Some of you have no idea what that is. You need to go back a few years to good old dial-up. So you're downloading today, right? But the problem is, here's the struggle we have. By tonight, you're going to switch over to airplane mode. And you're going to disconnect. And it's okay if you like listening to the same song all week. But guess what happens on Wednesday when you wake up and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm in a crisis. I need a new song. And you try to go download something, but yet you don't have connection because you're in airplane mode. You've turned off. You've unplugged. Now you got to go find ways to connect, to download again. And so we spend our lives downloading and disconnecting, downloading and disconnecting. And it doesn't really matter when everything in our life is perfect. It doesn't really affect us when all of our world is going right. But where it really starts to show is in moments of crisis, in the moments of need. When I go to download something, but I realize, oh no, I've turned it on airplane mode. And now I have no connection. But you know what? Here's the point. Let's not be iPhones today or Androids or Samsung Galaxies. I got this guy right here. This is, I'm a historian. I like history. And so I have, years ago, this was given to me. I have a vintage replica. In fact, you can see even my screen and reflection. Lord Jesus, I'm showing away all my secrets. I've got a vintage replica of an old Crosley radio. Now, the difference in this device and this device, they both play music, but they do it in a different way. See, this device can download music and then unplug. And so it can sound like music, but it can be disconnected from the source. So even though music may be playing, you don't know if it's connected to the source or not, because that music may have already been downloaded. So as long as there's music playing, well, everything's okay. But guess what? When you need a new song, there's no source. But you see, the cool thing about a radio is a radio doesn't have a source. There's nothing in this radio that you can download to. Boys and girls, in case you're watching, this is a radio. Yes, I'm sure some of you have no clue what it is. This is a radio. And you see, a radio is unique, right? Because right now, all over, it's all in the air. There are signals, sounds, music. Do you know there's music playing in the room? You just can't hear it. There's words being spoken. You can't hear it. Somewhere there's music playing in this room. You just can't hear it. But if you have a way to connect and you turn on this radio and you got this little knob here, you got these knobs, and right here's one right here. You can actually see. Can you see that? Oh, you can. Look at that. You can see the knob turning as I do it, right? Because we understand that even though there's stuff playing in this room right now, I've got to get on the right frequency. When I was a kid, I had a radio in my room, and I don't know why I did this. I don't know what was. I guess I was a strange kid, but I would sit in my room at night. I was like 11, 12 years old. I would lay in my room at night, and I had a radio, very much like this, not this particular one, but a radio with a tuner. And I'd sit in my room at night and I would just work that dial. I mean, just painstakingly, slowly work that dial, especially on AM frequency. And I would love to see what stations I could tune into. And what's really cool is I got to points where I would see how far away I could pick up signals. I remember one night in particular, I was watching, I was doing my little I'm painstaking. I'm moving it teeny bits, little tiny bits. And there'd be times where I would hear it, and I'd hear the crackling of a station, and then I'd take the radio and I'd move the radio around, moving around the room, trying to find that perfect place, hearing it. And I remember I got so excited one night because I started tuning in to a radio station from Denver, Colorado. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm here in Maryland and I'm tuning into a station in Denver. It was perfect. It came through clear. And I got on the right frequency and I held the radio in the right position. And here I am in Maryland listening to a station in Denver, Colorado. I used to listen to a radio station in St. Louis. At night in the summertime, I would sit in my room and I would tune in and I'd listen how many baseball games I could get to. I would be listening to the Pittsburgh Pirates or the St. Louis Cardinals or the New York Yankees or I'd pick up the Cleveland Indians or the Cincinnati Reds. All these teams in our area that they're on this side of the United States. I'd be listening to baseball by just tuning in. And for some reason, if I found a station. This was the crazy part about it. If I found the station one night and it worked crystal clear, when I went back on the next night to turn it on, it wouldn't be as clear. And I have to go back on there again and I have to work the dial just a little bit. I'd have to work the position. I don't know if it was, I'm not scientific enough to figure all this out. Some of you probably know all this, but depending on maybe the temperature or maybe, I don't know, all kinds of stuff maybe affects radio waves. I have no idea. Sun, position of the sun, stars, I have no idea. Tinfoil hats, I don't know. Something was affecting those signals that where I was the night before, I had to readjust to make sure that night I was changing. It was the same position on the dial, but one day made a difference between being connected and not being connected. You see, really walking with Jesus is more like a radio than it should be an iPhone. We've made it an iPhone, right? Sunday morning, got to get my download. Boo. So I can get up Monday morning and go to airplane mode. That's how we look at God now. But you see, this is a Saul relationship with God. When I need God, I'll run to Samuel. Samuel, download God's word in me right now. But then when I don't have Samuel and I don't need God, I disconnect. I do my own thing. I walk my own way, my own strength. But the problem is, if iTunes stopped playing right now, I wouldn't have it because that's my connection to music. But you see, this is a David relationship with God. It's not fancy. Man, come on. Who really, seriously, unless you're just a nostalgic person or you just like vintage stuff, how many of you right now would like, oh man, you take your iPhone, I want a radio. I don't even know if you can buy a radio now. I've had this for years. We were talking about this last night. Can you go into Walmart? I'm sure somebody's screaming at me on Facebook right now. I don't have it, so I don't know if you are or not. Can you go buy a radio in like Walmart? I think at Home Depot you might, but I don't know. Maybe you still, come on. Do you even, how many actually have a radio in your house that you have if you have a radio, it's digital, right? Where you just punch in the number, but I don't know. How many of you still listen to a dial-toned radio? But I think walking with Jesus is more like this than this. Sometimes technology, you lose something. My kids, I think if I gave them this to them, they'd probably have no idea what to do with it because they're used to this. And you know what's funny? We're so used to a relationship with God based on this, but this is how really walking with Jesus is about. Because you know what? I got to be in tune with him and frequency with him. And you know what? That doesn't start in a moment of crisis. It really starts with today, right now. Okay? Let's just I can't take care of yesterday and all the other days before that, and I really can't take care of tomorrow. Let's talk about right now, April the 26th, 2020. Can't take care of tomorrow. Tomorrow has its own troubles, the Bible says. Don't worry about tomorrow. It's got its own problems. Don't worry about the past. Let God forgive you. Put it under the blood. Let's get rid of it. Let's deal with today. Today, have you spent time tuning into God's frequency? Or are you just living on where your knob was yesterday? Are you living where your knob was last month, last year? And you see, it seems like it's where it's supposed to be, but if you plugged it in, you'll find, wait a minute, I left the knob where I heard God last time, but now I don't hear him the same way. I get crackles. I get pops. Because you know what? I may have to position myself a little bit today. I may have to work on tuning myself. There may be some things that are blocking the signal of it. You know what? It sounds silly. I'll uplift. You know, sometimes, again, I'm a weird visual person, so walk with me here. I understand I'm kooky. I sometimes picture when I lift my hands in worship, like you can't see the top of my hands. There we go. You can see it. I'm a little tall in my camera angle. There we go. I sometimes look at my hands in worship as antennas. I know I've lost half of you. You're like, oh my goodness, he is. Woo. Where's the alien ship that took him last night? Because he is off his rocker. I look at his antennas because when I lift my hands, I want to lift my hands and I'm tuning in to God. You ever had, come on. I know some of you may still have them somewhere in your closet somewhere. Remember rabbit ears? Everybody, even people they had rabbit ears, right? Yes, those two long 17-foot antennas you stuck on top of the TV, you plugged into the back, and you could adjust them, and you could get channels, right? And everybody had them. Even people that didn't have TV had rabbit ears so that in case a moment, 9/11, everyone go grab the rabbit ears. The buildings are coming down. So we grabbed them. And you know what the rabbit ears are? You plug them in, right? And you got to put those things in. You got to adjust them. You got to angle them. You got rabbit ears this way, and you got rabbits there. And it's really crazy. You got to do all this stuff to get this signal right, to get a clear picture. And it was really annoying, right? When the rabbit ears, you get like this crackly with snowy picture. And then you'd adjust it, and you get the clear picture. And what was really frustrating is if you had an old set of rabbit ears, you'd get them right where you wanted to when you were holding them. And the moment you let them go, they would like move a little bit, and you lose the picture. And so you always had to kind of hold them. You had to stand there and hold them to get that picture clear. Sometimes I feel like when I'm worshiping, it's rabbit ears. Now, I don't physically do this. Maybe you do. I'm not physically waving, but I'm tuning in to God. When I wake up in the morning and I begin to start my day saying, God, I worship you. I love you. I give you praise. I'm tuning into the frequency of today because I want to walk with Jesus every single day. And I want to make sure that I'm in tune with him every day. And every day requires a little bit of an adjustment because I have flesh. I have difficulty. I'm not perfect. I've got bad days and bad thoughts and ups and downs. And so every day I want to tune into his frequency. I want to adjust. Have you taken time today? Are you just here today to get a download from God for your weekly download, and then tomorrow you're going to get into airplane mode, or by tonight you'll be in airplane mode, and I'll turn back in next week. I'll hear you, God, next week. But you know what the problem is? Monday, Tuesday, God's still talking, but we're not listening because we're in airplane mode. But what would happen if this week you focused on every day saying, God, I want to be in connection with you. I want to keep myself on your frequency. I want to be in connection with you. There's some times where I get out of tune with him and I say, God, Lord, forgive me for what I've done. Forgive me for what I haven't done. Forgive me for the things that I did I knew were wrong, and forgive me for the things I did I didn't realize were wrong. But God, I want you to wash me, cleanse me, forgive me, so I can get back into tune with you. I want to hear your voice. Some of you say, I don't know if I can hear God. Is God talking? Yeah, he's talking. The question is, are you tuning in? You say, well, I don't think God talks. No, he's talking. You just aren't listening because your ears are tuned. And you know what's amazing? I can tune this all the way around this dial, and every place I tune, I'll get a different message. Different station. Some stations may play pop music. Some stations play country. Some may play oldies. Some may play classical. Some may play R&B. Some may be talk shows, whatever it may be. Different stations. So you know what? Can I say this today? And I'm done. You're tuned into something today. But the problem is right now we're in a moment of crisis, coronavirus going on. Oh, so what are we doing? We're tuned in. We're tuning into the news. We're tuning into Facebook. We're tuning into the chatter of this world. We're tuning into fear. We're tuning into worry. We're tuning into doubt. We're tuning into stress and depression. How about tune out of depression? Tune into Jesus. Tune out of fear. Tune into faith. Tune out of worry. Tune into peace. How do I do that? Very simple. You've got to start connecting with Jesus right where you are. Start with praise. Start with worship. Start with getting your rabbit ears in alignment with his signal. God, I praise you today. I worship you today. I love you today. I need you today. I cannot make it without you today. And when all of a sudden, when you start doing that, you're going to feel like, whoa, I feel the clarity of the picture. I feel a sound coming in. And now you know you're tuning in. And you keep doing that. And some days it takes you just a moment. Other days it may take you a little while. But if you do that every day, when you have your Psalms 63 moment of your wilderness, God will be right there. You'll be able to say with David, oh God, I'm in a dry and thirsty land where there is no water, but I still hunger and thirst for you greater than my natural needs. How did David get there? Because he spent day upon day as a shepherd boy tuning in to God, that he learned how to walk with God. But yet you had a king in Saul who never learned how to tune into God. He always just waited for Samuel to come bring his latest download. I don't want to download a message to you today for you to hear and then download the voice of God into you. I want you to find God for yourself. I don't want to give you the latest word. Here's the latest word from God. Here it is. Download it to your heart today. I'm saying don't be an iPhone or an Android. Be a radio. Tune in to God today. God's talking to you. Do you know God's talking to you right now? Do you know when I turn this off in the next few minutes, God's going to be talking to you? Oh, I don't think he is. No. See, that's the problem. It's because you're not tuned in. Tune into God. Tune out of fear. Tune into faith. Tune out of the worry. Tune into peace. Tune out from the voice of this world and tune into the voice of God. You see, you're going to tune into something today. The question is just, what are you going to tune into? Right now, I can tune into classical music, country music, pop music. I can tune into whatever music I choose. You today, don't say, well, I don't think I can do that. Oh, you can do it. You're just choosing to tune into other things. You can tune into sports. You can tune into movies. You can tune into Netflix. You can tune into YouTube. You can tune into whatever. Social media. You're going to tune into something today. I'm just saying, if you would tune into Jesus, he'll change your life. Because you know what? You're going to have wilderness moments. You're going to have moments like this. The coronavirus is not the first nor the last moment of struggle in your life. But if you would learn to walk with Jesus like a radio, when the moment comes of crisis, you'll still hear the sound of his voice. Because every day, tomorrow morning, guess what? First thing you do when you get up, I don't care if you have to say it. Say, Lord, help me tune in my radio to you. Oh, that's so silly. Well, you know what? Sometimes you got to be a little silly. God, let me tune in my radio to you. Can I challenge you today? I'm done. I seriously am done. Can I challenge you today? Don't have a download relationship with Jesus Christ. Have a radio relationship with Jesus Christ. Yeah, it may look old, antiquated, but you know what's amazing? This thing works. But you got to have some time to get it tuned in. Yeah, it's not push. Oh, man, nowadays, I push a button on my car. If I want to listen to a radio station, I don't even tune to it. I hit a button. Booyah! There it is. I don't have to tune to it anymore, folks. I got presets. God is not a preset. You can't find God on a preset. Well, God was there last week. Yeah, God was there last week, but you're here now this week. Don't rely on last week's preset to be the thing where you hear from God. Last week was for last week, but today is the day of salvation. Don't rely on yesterday's signal. Get a fresh signal from God today. Because you know what? Every day changes. Every day, life changes. Every day, our heart is changing. Every day, circumstances are changing. Don't work on yesterday's preset. Find God today. Not because it's Sunday. Well, it's Sunday. I've got to find God today. No. I'm saying just start today. It happens to be Sunday, but don't just treat it like it's Sunday. Tomorrow morning, when you get up, the first thing you do when your eyes open, before you may have to go take a tinkle. I get it. But after all that, when you're done that, say, God, I want to tune into you today. I want to hear you. And you might say, why am I hearing God? Well, because you might have some stuff in you that you need to get rid of. Some static. God, forgive me of my sin. God, I give you this situation I'm carrying. I give you this hurt. You might have to get rid of some things so you can get connected with him. But if you do, man, I'm telling you what, wow, a radio relationship with Jesus is so much better than an iPhone relationship with Jesus, because every day I can hear him and I can make little adjustments instead of living my life in airplane mode, where I can download him when I need him, but then disconnect when I don't. Can you let God today help you find him like you've never before? Look, I get it. We can't go back and change yesterday, and we really can't even do anything about tomorrow. Let's take care of today. Father, I can feel your heartbeat. I can feel you calling and searching and reaching, because you want to have a personal experience with everybody that's watching today. And those that will watch, you want to have a personal connection. You don't want to connect to them through me. You don't want to connect to them through Antioch West. You don't need a church or a preacher to connect with them. You want to have a personal, intimate connection with them, just you and them. They don't need me to download your word into their heart. You can speak to them. I pray today, God, that you would give us the grace to connect with you. Let us tune into your frequency. God, any sin, any bit of our flesh, any bit of our own will, our own pleasure, our own works of our own flesh and will that are causing there to be static in our connection with you, God, I pray that you would remove those so that we can hear you clearly. And for those of us that are not hearing you clearly, God, give us the grace today to tune into you today, but not just for today. When we wake up in the morrow, first thing we think about is, God, I want to tune into you today. I want to walk with you today. I want to be in connection with you today. So in those wilderness moments, you're never beyond our reach, but you're always with us on the good days and the bad days, on the mountains and in the valleys, because we're connected with you. Let us connect with you today like we've never connected you before. In this moment of coronavirus, where we're dealing with so many things we've never dealt with before, let us find you like we've never found you before. And let us see the reality of who you are and the amazing life that comes from having a relationship with you on a daily basis, not just a Sunday download, but a daily walk. In Jesus' name, I pray, God, that every person that has heard this today would not hear the words of Joel Wright, but that would ultimately hear the call of you that wants to connect with them and wants to have an intimate, personal relationship with them every day. I speak all these things in Jesus' name. Thank you for watching today. Appreciate you hanging out and being with us today. And I pray in Jesus' name that you will be blessed by what you've heard today, but more importantly, that this would connect you further with your relationship with Jesus Christ. God bless you. Please be safe. Please, please, please walk in the peace of God as you have continued to navigate this time. God bless you.